my name is Amber Taylor, and I am coming to you today to talk about cookies, one of my favorite things. But a little bit about myself. I am a pregnancy counselor at Bethany Christian Services. That's what I do for my job, and I really love that. I'm also part of the Boulevard Church, which is a church plant here in Holland, and something that I feel like God has gifted me in and that I've been able to bring to the Boulevard and to my neighborhood is a love for food and baking and inviting others into my home and my kitchen. I feel like food is such a great way to tear down barriers and kind of make people feel comfortable in uncomfortable situations in a way to just share the love of Christ with people. So I've always been someone that loves to bake and to feed other people. When I moved into this house a couple years ago, I offered some cookies to the little boy that lived next door who would come on into my house and kind of see what was going on as I was moving in. And we kind of became friends along the way, and he figured out that I had a really good chocolate chip cookie. And so from that time on, he would just come to my door periodically and say, "Hey, you got any of those cookies?" And he would come with friends, and sometimes I was able to just invite him into my kitchen and have them in my kitchen with me while I was baking, which was a really great thing and a really great way to get to know them and for them to get to know me, and in that get to share the love of Christ with my neighbor. Today I'm going to be sharing one of my favorite cookie recipes with you. It's a Snickerdoodle cookie, which when I think about fall and winter and kind of cozy vibes, I think of a Snickerdoodle cookie. They're so sugary and cinnamony, and they have such a strong fragrance that fills your home when you bake them, which makes them one of my favorite cookies to bake. So I'm really excited to share that recipe with you today. Welcome to my kitchen. I have all the ingredients laid out to make the perfect fall Snickerdoodle. So I'm gonna show you how to make these delicious cookies. And I really encourage you to jot down the recipe and get in your kitchen. The ingredients are super simple, usually things that people just have on hand. So you can whip up a batch and maybe share some with your neighbor. So first, we are going to cream together a full cup of butter, which is 2 sticks. I did not always have a beautiful KitchenAid mixer. I started a side bakery business a couple years ago, and for probably 4 years, I just used a hand mixer. I went through many hand mixers, but some wonderful, beautiful friends gifted me with a yellow KitchenAid, which is always my dream, which now makes baking a lot easier. So you're gonna cream the butter just until it's nice and light and fluffy for a minute or two, maybe not even that. And what you're gonna do next, I have prepared here is 3/4 cup of white sugar and 1/2 cup of brown sugar. So once the butter is light and fluffy, you'll add the sugars. And this you'll want to put on medium speed for a full 2 minutes. So all the butter is mixing with the sugar and making it nice and fluffy, so you can have a nice and fluffy cookie. After that, I'll wait till that kind of does its thing. But in this cookie, you are going to be using an egg and then a full egg yolk, but not the egg white. So this will kind of give the cookie a little more density, make it kind of dense in the middle, but still light and fluffy as well. So yeah, I have always really had a love for inviting others into my kitchen. I started baking when I was really young. My aunt is a professional baker and has a bakery business actually out of her home in Ohio, and she would watch us during the summer times and invite us into the kitchen with her to bake, and took us to baking classes and just helped me to kind of develop a love for baking. And I always used to see how happy it would make people when you offered them some baked goods, and I just wanted to make people happy in that way too. So wherever I've lived throughout my adult life, I have always kind of had an open kitchen policy that people could come and drop in, and I usually try to keep the ingredients of everything on hand so I can make baked goods for people when they come by. So this has creamed for about 2 minutes. So I'm going to turn it down a little bit. I'm going to add the eggs. One full egg and 1 egg yolk. I'll turn it on a little higher. And you can also add now 1 tablespoon of vanilla. At this point too, you might need to scrape down the sides. Once it has gotten a little bit fluffy, I'll do that as well. So next I am going to add cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of cream of tartar, and a half a teaspoon of salt. Just blend that for a little bit, and then putting it on low, you're going to add 2 3/4 cup of flour. Try not to be a mess because I'm always a messy baker. And you'll just let this mix until it is incorporated, and then I'll show you what the mixture should look like. And sometimes I'll turn it off a little early and then just mix in any remaining of the flour. But it should be fluffy and doughy, and all the flour should be incorporated. So another thing that I have been known for when presenting cookies to people is the size of my cookies. I believe that large cookies are the best kind of cookies, so that is what these are. So you're going to use any type of scoop. I've used even just like a tablespoon, but you want to make it like 2 tablespoons of dough. And you're going to roll these up. And then here I have 1/4 cup of white sugar mixed with 1 tablespoon of cinnamon. And you're going to roll the cookies into the cinnamon and sugar and place on a baking sheet with parchment paper. And you're going to continue to do this with all of the dough. It should be 12 cookies, give or take, depending on how big or how little you make them. You can always make them smaller if you'd like. And once we have these all on the baking sheet, I always chill my cookies. If you're using a cookie recipe you found online, if you are even really using like packaged cookie dough, you should always bake it when it's nice and cold. This helps all of the ingredients in the cookies to kind of stay or get solid, and that's what gives you a beautiful fluffy cookie. So putting it in the refrigerator, even just for 15 minutes, helps them get nice and cold and solidifies the butter, which makes for a very fluffy cookie. And these will fit 6 per baking sheet, so you should spread them out pretty far because they are kind of giant cookies. All right, so once your cookies have chilled for a little bit, you can leave them in there overnight if you want to. If you are thinking about making them the next day and want to prep the dough early, that is completely fine. You can put them in the oven frozen, but mine have been chilling for about 10-15 minutes, and I'm going to put them in the oven at 325. cook them for about 12 to 15 minutes. You just want to keep an eye on them. I've been baking cookies for so long that I feel like I can just tell when they're done by the look of them. So sometimes it's hard to give a number because of the temperature of your oven can be different, even though you have it set to 325. So just keep an eye on them when they're done. They'll be nice and fluffy, a little crinkly on top. They'll almost look like they're not done. That is the key to a perfect cookie, is taking them out of the oven when they almost look a little doughy in the center. They'll actually keep cooking on the cookie sheet, so you can take them out a little early and let them cool completely on the cookie sheet. All right, so the cookies have been in for about 16 minutes. They're bigger cookies, so they do take a little bit more time to bake, but they'll look, as you'll notice, and this is a perfect example that when you are a baker, not everything happens perfectly. Not all the cookies are going to be the same size. This one, likely the butter just didn't solidify in the freezer, which is a good reason why you freeze your cookies, because if you don't, they do spread out just a little bit more. But the others are perfect. They look a little bit gooey in the center, but they are nice and crispy on the edges, and you'll leave them to cool on the baking sheet, because like I said, they'll keep cooking for a while after they come out of the oven, and they smell so delicious. I wish that you could smell these. You'll have to bake them yourself so you can let your house kind of smell like these cookies. They're really just the perfect fall cookie. They're comforting and sweet and good to eat them warm or at room temperature, of course. So they've cooled on the baking sheet for a little bit and finished cooking, and they are still pretty warm. I'm gonna try a bite. They're so delicious. The most perfect fall cookie, like I said, and just such a easy way to extend love and care and hospitality to your neighbors, to people at work, to people at church. It's just a really fun way to show God's love through baked goods.